Xi Jinping. We had a big meeting, arguably, as I said, the most important meeting in the world. We didn't have any crazy developments, but they met for over 4 hours face-to-face, with is extraordinary always to have any president and the premier of China sit down for that long period of time. Let's take a listen to a little bit of what was said inside of the meeting.
Ready, close. Ready, cut. Ready, face. Forward.
I value our conversation because I think it's paramount that you and I understand each other clearly, leader to leader, with no misconceptions or miscommunication. We have to ensure that competition does not veer into conflict. And we also have to manage it responsibly, that competition. That's what the United States wants and what we intend to do.
China-US relationship has never been smooth sailing over the past 50 years or more, and it always faces problems of one kind or another. Yet it has kept moving forward amid twists and turns.
So what you heard a little bit there was like the pleasantries that are involved. Obviously, Xi doesn't like the press, so didn't answer any questions. There were no press conferences or any of that. But the public statements from him and the readouts are some things that we can parse about what was said within the meeting. Let's go and put this up there on the screen. The Chinese are obsessed with the concept of mutual respect. And when they say that word, what they mean is that whatever we say goes, and then whatever you say, well, it may go, it may not go. But the idea is that all things should be discussed on a footing in which each person's viewpoint is considered valid, and by that they mostly mean their own. What happened in this meeting was very important. President Xi Jinping of China told, quote, that it was unrealistic for either of the two largest economic and military superpowers to expect to, quote, remodel the other, as both countries tried in their own way to halt the downward spiral in their relationship. He also took pains to emphasize, quote, that planet Earth is big enough for two superpowers. I think the use of the word superpower and Earth were also very intentional in terms of what they said. The Chinese came in with this with a single goal, Krystal, and that was to ensure that continued decoupling policy, which is effectively bipartisan now at this point, does not proceed. The Chinese economy is suffering dearly. Something that you should take note of is that sitting right next to President Biden was Secretary Janet Yellen, who is as big of a China economic dove as exists within the US cabinet. And in fact, there were explicit decisions made in terms of the seating chart and all of that to make sure that President Biden had his most China-friendly aides around him, that the Chinese also wanted to dictate for who that they were talking to. The important point that they were trying to do is that they're trying to throw America a bone on something that they really, really wanted. We wanted to restore our military-to-military communications for deconfliction purposes in the South China Sea. That's important, actually.
Support that, yeah.
I 100% support that. And the reason why is that they were suspended after the balloon. What they also wanted was to make sure that we understood that they could turn up the economic, the pain on us if they wanted to in the middle of an election year. But also they want us to stop putting the economic pain on them. Almost all of it comes back to Xi Jinping and his grasp on power. Apparently there was a comment made, who knows how far you can take this to the bank. China said they didn't address Taiwan exactly, but just said that they wouldn't expect any military action, quote, in the coming years. Overall, the meeting itself probably went well in that there were no major falling apart episodes. There wasn't a repeat of the 2021 meeting where Jake Sullivan met with his counterpart in Alaska and basically got screamed at on camera for 4 hours, which probably marked a real nadir, I guess, for the relationship. So interestingly, I think from America's point of view, what Biden wanted going into the meeting is he basically wanted to telegraph to Xi, he's like, don't make my life harder. I've got Ukraine and I've got Israel. Just please, you don't be a problem for me. And Xi very much wants to use that to his advantage. And he's like, okay, but then I'm going to need to see you guys play ball with me a little bit here. This is all in the context of the overall APEC meeting with other Asian leaders who are inside of San Francisco. We talked about all the domestic stuff too on Tuesday.
The cleanup.
San
Francisco
where he admitted it. He admitted on camera. That's a whole other thing. Anyway,
I guess I appreciate the candor.
Yes, yeah, exactly. we appreciate honesty on this show.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that are interesting to me. First of all, it's important to remember that, basically there was such a massive fallout over that whole balloon tense situation.
Yeah,
there was
it's huge.
wasn't Blinken
Yeah.
that was supposed to
Yeah, he
travel to
canceled his
China
trip.
and canceled his trip,
That's right.
and so since then things have been on a bit of a downward spiral. So that's part of why this meeting takes on extra importance. The last time the two met was a year ago. It was on the sidelines of the G20 in Bali. There was the stated goal of that meeting was to try to create a quote floor under the relationship. That didn't go all that well. This one seems to have gone much better. They also agreed, China agreed to crack down on the flow of chemicals used to make fentanyl to Mexican cartels. So that was the additional. But Saagar, do you read into this that there's been kind of a pivot on China's part because of the economic stress that they're under right now?
It's hard to say. China is probably in the best position that's ever been in its relationship with the United States in terms of power. And what the reason I mean by that is that I just laid it out. I mean, to me, this is the most important. The reason we put this second, I know it's boring and I apologize, is this is the most important meeting in the world. But the way that the Biden administration and most people in Washington think, they think Ukraine is the front line of democracy. And they think that Israel is like the great, most important thing. They should dominate all of our politics. It should dominate all of our military aid and all of that. It's like, what if I told you that neither Israel or Ukraine is even close to the top 20 in our trading partners in the world? China is literally number 2, especially if you consider Canada and Mexico. When you really think about how singularly important the relationship is there, and then the fate of the Asia Pacific, to me, it's crazy that they want to look at China as a sideshow. So China is in a very, so here's the thing too, if you're coming in to a meeting, if you know President Biden and Jake Sullivan are obsessed with Ukraine, what are you gonna sit there and talk about all day? We're like, oh, maybe we'll give Russia weapons, maybe we won't. And it's like, yeah, but as long as you're talking about that, you're not talking about our 301 tariffs on steel. We're not talking about Taiwan. We're not talking about Japan, South Korea, countries that actually produce things which are important for us. This is the problem, my overall problem with the Biden administration's foreign policy is they are, it's like they are living in a 2003 world in how they conduct their overall foreign policy or even think about the economy, mostly because Biden is old, and they refuse to wake up to 50% of world GDP is sitting in San Francisco right now with the APEC conference when you include China. And yet it's a sideshow to everything that else is happening. So for China, they really want to use that in order to make sure that they can drive down any of the bipartisan movement on tariffs here in Washington. And I actually think they're going to be successful. I would expect that there is going to be some tariff relief in 2024 because the Biden people are under such pressure to deliver a better economy. And of course, what's the easiest thing? You give up on the tariffs, which is, it's laughable when you really consider it because that's just short-term short-term reduction in price at the overall expense of American manufacturing. So anyway, that's my overall read of the situation.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
All right, let's get to the polling.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.